Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Sri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Om Apavitra Pavitro Va Sarva Avastangato Va Yat Smaret Pundarik Akshang Sabhaya Abhyantara Suchihi Sri Vishnu Sri Vishnu Sri Vishnu Om Ajnana Timarandasya Jnana Anjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militang Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Panggung Langhayate Giring Yat Kripa Tamahang Vandi Sri Gurung Dinataranam Yat Kripa Tamahang Vandi Parama Ananda Madhavam Trinada Pisuni Chena Tarar Iva Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Hare Nama Hare Nama Hare Nama Eva Kevalam Kalo Nastyeva 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 Gatir Anyata Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we start a new section. We are going to cover 2 chapters, not all today, but the next 2 weeks. And this is called Balaram Yatra. So we have the chapter summaries as given to us in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and this will tell us what the overall gist of these 2 chapters are. When Lord Baladev heard that the Pandavas and Kauravas were about to go to war, in order to remain neutral, Balaram left Dwaraka on the pretext of going on pilgrimage. Balaram bathed in sacred places such as Prabhasa, Tritakupa, and Vishala. And eventually, Balaram came to the holy Naimisharanya forest, where great sages were performing an extended fire sacrifice. While being worshipped by the assembled sages and offered a seat of honor, Balaram noticed that Romaharshana Sutta, sitting on the speaker's seat, had failed to stand in deference to him. Greatly angered by this offense, Lord Balaram killed Romaharshan by simply touching Romaharshan with the tip of a blade of kusha grass. The assembled sages became disturbed by what Lord Baladev had done, and therefore they said to him, "O Lord, unknowingly you have killed a Brahmana. Therefore, even though you are above the Vedic injunctions, we request you to set a perfect example for the general populace by atoning for this sin." So then, Sri Baladev, following the Vedic maxim that one's son takes birth as one's own self, Balaram granted to Romaharshan's son, known as Ugrashrava or Sutta Goswami, the position of speaker of the Puranas, and in accordance with the sage's desires, Baladev promised Ugrashrava a long life with unfailing sensory capacity. Wanting to do something more for the sages, Lord Baladev promised to kill a demon named Bulvala, who had been polluting their sacrificial arena. Finally, on the sages' advice, Baladev agreed to go on a year-long pilgrimage of all the holy places in India. Chapter 79 describes how Lord Baladev satisfied the Brahmanas by killing Bulvala, and then Baladev bathed at various holy pilgrimage sites and attempted to dissuade Bhimasena and Duryodhana from fighting. At the sacrificial arena of the sages at Naimisharanya forest, a harsh wind began blowing on the new moon day, spreading the obnoxious smell of pus and obscuring everything with dust. The demon Bulvala then appeared there with a trident in his hand, his massive body pitch black and his face very frightening. Lord Baladev caught the demon with his plow and then struck Bulvala a ferocious blow on the head with his club, thus killing Bulvala. Then the sages chanted Lord Baladev's glories, presenting him with lavish gifts. Lord Balaram then began his pilgrimage, during which he visited many holy tirthas. When Balaram heard the news of the battle between the Kurus and the Pandavas, Balaram went to Kurukshetra to try to stop the duel between Bhima and Duryodhana. But Balaram could not dissuade them from fighting. So deep was their enmity. Understanding that the fight was the arrangement of Providence, Lord Baladev left the battlefield and returned to Dwaraka. Sometime later, Balaram again went to the Naimisharanya forest, where the sages performed a number of sacrifices on Balaram's behalf. Lord Baladev reciprocated by granting the sages transcendental knowledge and revealing to them his eternal identity as Lord Balaram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This episode is entitled, Why Lord Balaram Went Visiting Various Holy Places of Pilgrimage. Once upon a time, Lord Balaram heard that an arrangement was being made for a fight between the two rival parties in the Kuru dynasty, one headed by Duryodhana and the other by the Pandavas. Balaram did not like the idea that he was to be only a mediator to stop the fighting. Finding it unbearable not to take an active part on behalf of either of the parties, Balaram left Dwaraka on the plea of visiting various holy places of pilgrimage. Balaram first of all visited the place of pilgrimage known as Prabhasa Kshetra. Balaram took bath there and pacified the local brahmanas. Balaram offered oblations to the demigods, pittas, great sages, and people in general, in accordance with Vedic ritualistic ceremonies, for that is the Vedic method of visiting holy places. After this, accompanied by some respectable brahmanas, Balaram decided to visit different places on the bank of the river Sarasvati. Balaram gradually visited such places as Pritudaka, Bindusara, Tritakupa, Sudarshana Tirtha, Vishala Tirtha, Brahma Tirtha, and Chakra Tirtha. Besides these, Balaram also visited all the holy places on the bank of the Sarasvati river running towards the east. After this, Balaram visited all the holy principal places on the bank of the Yamuna and also on the bank of the Ganges. Therefore, Balaram gradually came to the holy place known as Naimisharanya. This holy place, Naimisharanya, is still existing in India, and in ancient times it was especially used for the meetings of great sages and saintly persons, with the aim of establishing, with the aim of understanding spiritual life and self-realization. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, after its first recitation by Shukadeva Goswami, Srimad Bhagavatam was repeated for the second time at Naimisharanya. In the Vayavirya Tantra, it is said that Lord Brahma, the engineer of this particular universe, contemplated a great wheel which would enclose the entire universe. The hub of this great circle was fixed at the particular place known as Naimisharanya. And similarly, there is another reference to the forest of Naimisharanya in the Varaha Purana, where it is stated that by performance of sacrifice at this place, the strength of demoniac people is curtailed. Thus, Brahmanas prefer Naimisharanya for such sacrificial performances. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, our next excerpt is entitled Romaharshan Sutta Killed. When Lord Balaram visited that place of Naimisharanya, there was a great sacrifice being performed by a great assembly of transcendentalists. Such meetings were planned to last thousands of years. So when Lord Balaram arrived, all the participants in the meeting, namely great sages, ascetics, brahmanas, and learned scholars, immediately arose from their seats and welcomed Balaram with great honor and respect. Some offered Balaram respects by standing up and then paying obeisances. And those who were elderly great sages and brahmanas offered Balaram blessings after standing up. After this formality, Lord Balaram was offered a suitable seat, and everyone present worshipped Balaram. Everyone in the assembly stood up in the presence of Balaram because they knew Balaram to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Education or learning means to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, although Lord Balaram appeared on the earth as a Kshatriya, all the Brahmins and sages stood up because they knew who Lord Balaram actually is. Unfortunately, after being worshipped and seated in his place, Lord Balaram noticed that Romaharshan, a disciple of Vyasadeva, the literary incarnation of God, was still sitting on the Vyasasana. For Romaharshan had neither gotten up from his seat nor offered Balaram respects. Because Romaharshan was seated on the Vyasasana, Romaharshan foolishly thought himself greater than Lord Balaram. Therefore, Romaharshan did not get down from his seat or bow down before Lord Balaram. Lord Balaram then considered the history of Romaharshan. Romaharshan was born in a Sutta family or mixed family, born of a Brahmana woman and a Kshatriya man. Therefore, although Romaharshan considered Balaram a Kshatriya, still Romaharshan should not have remained sitting on a higher seat. According to Romaharshan's position by birth, Romaharshan should not even have accepted the higher sitting position because many learned Brahmins and sages were present. Lord Balaram also observed that Romaharshan not only refused to come down from his exalted seat, but did not even stand up and offer respects when Balaramaji entered the assembly. Lord Balaram did not like the audacity and disrespectful boldness of Romaharshan, and so, becoming very angry at Romaharshan, Balaram declared from his seat, "This man, Romaharshan, is so impudent and presumptuous that he has accepted a higher seat than that of all the respectable Brahmanas present here, although he was born in a degraded Pratiloma family." When a person is seated on the Vyasasana, one does not generally have to stand to receive a particular person entering the assembly. But in this case, the situation was different because Lord Baladev is not an ordinary human being. Therefore, although Romaharshan Sutta was voted to the Vyasasana by all the Brahmanas present, Romaharshan should have followed the behavior of the other learned sages and Brahmanas present and should have known that Lord Balaram is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Respects are always due Balaram, even though such respects can be avoided in the case of an ordinary man. The appearance of Krishna and Balaram is especially meant for re-establishment of the religious principles, as stated in Bhagavad Gita. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanang vraja aham tvang sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shucha. The highest religious principle is to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam also confirms that the topmost perfection of religion is to be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. So, When Lord Balaram saw that Romaharsana Sutta did not understand this highest principle of religion, in spite of having studied all the Vedas, Balaram certainly could not support Romaharshan's position. Romaharshana Sutta had been given the chance to become a perfect Brahmana, but because of his ill behavior in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Romaharshan's low birth was immediately remembered. Romaharshana Sutta had been given the position of a Brahmana, but Romaharshan had not been born in the family of a Brahmana. Romaharshan had been born in a pratiloma or mixed family. According to the Vedic concept, there are two kinds of mixed family heritage, known as Anuloma and Pratiloma. When a male is united with a female of a lower caste, the offspring is called Anuloma. But when a male unites with a woman of a higher caste, the offspring is called Pratiloma. So Romaharshan Sutta belonged to a Pratiloma family because his father was a Kshatriya and his mother a Brahmana. Because Romaharshan's transcendental realization was not perfect, Lord Balaram remembered Romaharshan's Pratiloma heritage. The idea is that any man may be given the chance to become a Brahmana, but if he improperly uses the position of a Brahmana without actual realization, then one's elevation to the Brahmanical position is not valid. After seeing the deficiency of realization in Romaharshan Sutta, Lord Balaram decided to chastise Romaharshan for his being puffed up. Lord Balaram therefore said, "This man is liable to be awarded the death punishment because although he has the good qualification of being a disciple of Lord Vyasadeva, and although he has studied all the Vedic literature from this exalted personality, Romaharshan was not submissive in the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead." As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavi Hastini Shuni Chaiva Shvapake Cha Pandita Sama Darshana. A person who is actually a Brahmana and is very learned must automatically become very gentle also. But although Romaharshan Sutta was very learned and had been given the chance to become a Brahmana, Romaharshan had not become gentle. From this we can understand that when one is puffed up by material acquisitions, one cannot acquire the gentle behavior befitting a Brahmana. The learning of such a person is as good as a valuable jewel decorating the hood of a serpent. Despite the valuable jewel on the hood, a serpent is still a serpent and is as fearful as any ordinary serpent. If a person does not become meek and humble, all of one's studies of the Vedas and Puranas and one's vast knowledge in the Shastras are simply outward dress only, like the costume of a theatrical artist dancing on the stage. For me personally, this sentence is of great significance. I want to repeat it so that it goes deep into my heart. If a person does not become meek and humble, all of one's studies of the Vedas and Puranas and one's vast knowledge in the Shastras are simply outward dress, like the costume of a theatrical artist dancing on the stage. Thus, Lord Balaram continued to consider, I have appeared in order to chastise false persons who are internally impure, but externally pose themselves to be very learned and religious. So my killing of such persons is proper in order to check them from further sinful activity. Lord Balaram had avoided taking part in the battle of Kurukshetra, and yet, because of his position as an incarnation, the re-establishment of religious principles was Balaram's prime duty. Considering all these points, Balaram killed Romaharshan Sutta simply by striking Romaharshan with the blade of kusha straw, which was nothing but a blade of grass. If someone questions how Lord Balaram could kill Romaharshan Sutta simply by striking Romaharshan with the blade of kusha grass, the answer is found in the Srimad Bhagavatam by the use of the word Prabhu, Master. The Lord's position is always transcendental, and because God is omnipotent, God can act as He likes without being obliged to follow the material laws and principles. Thus, it was possible for Balaram to kill Romaharshan Sutta simply by striking Romaharshan with the blade of kusha grass. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namaste Narasimhaya, Prahlad Aklad Dayane, Hiranya Kashi Purvakshaha, Shilatangana Kalaye, Ito Nrsinga Parato Nrsingo, Yato Yato Yami Tato Nrsimha, Bahir Nrsinga Hridaye Nrsimho, Nrsimham Ading Sharanang Prapaje, Tavakara Kamala Vare Nakam Adbhuta Sringam, Dalita Hiranya Kashipu Tanubringam, Keshavadrita Narahadi Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Keshavadrita Nrsinga Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadish, Jaya Jagadish, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Tat Sat.